When I talk about Desnethé-Missinippi-Churchill River, I talk about northern Saskatchewan. And literally my riding is 54% of the geography of northern Saskatchewan, from Manitoba to Alberta to the Northwest Territories and halfway down the province of Saskatchewan. So I serve a very large riding with about 71% of the people in my riding are of Indigenous background. And so it's a privilege for me to serve that area of northern Saskatchewan, literally northern Saskatchewan. I want to thank the elder for her comments. Those are very wise, and one of the things I always appreciate about the opportunity I have to attend First Nation events in my community or other Indigenous events is the respect that you have for the elders in your culture and for the people that come and give wisdom, and you share that. And it's something I've learned over the years. I was a mayor for many years and shared the stage with many of my First Nations friends in northern Saskatchewan, and the respect and the advice that you take from elders is always very appreciated, and I think that's a really wise thing. I want to thank you for having the singers. That's also really great, and I want to recognize the other people sharing the stage today. And I'm not going to do names as well, because Minister and I were talking, and as soon as we start listing people, then we leave somebody out and we're in trouble. So thank you to everybody. So I want to start my comments by just saying that, you know what, it's really a privilege to be here. When I was elected in 2019, one of the things that I talked a lot about was trying to build relationships with people. And one of the first groups that I was able to connect with was the people of NACA and many of the AFIs that you serve or that you work with across the country, many in northern Saskatchewan. And so when I was given this role, and just, sorry, as an update, I was actually appointed the Shadow Minister for Indigenous Services last week. So I've flipped back to a role I had 3 years ago, and so Minister Hage and I are going to get to know each other fairly well, probably. So, but when I was appointed that position, it's a very significant responsibility to represent people across the country in that way. And the relationships I talk about are really, really important, as they play a huge role in bringing prosperity and self-determination to Indigenous people in the communities across the country. As we're here today to celebrate the launch of Adaawe and the IB Hub, I want to thank everyone for the vision, for the hard work and the literal execution of continuing to build on the momentum that Indigenous entrepreneurs across the country are creating every day. I don't need to be here in Ottawa to see the effects that NACA and the AFIs that you work with are having on Indigenous prosperity. When I'm in northern Saskatchewan, I see it every day. I see it in agriculture, forestry, mining, and so many other sectors where these sectors are becoming the beneficiary of having an Indigenous partners and visionaries participate in the economy. So thank you for that. The number of Indigenous people who play an integral role in the economic fabric of our communities is growing exponentially, and that's a very good thing. Their entrepreneurial and innovative skills are valuable in increasing the capacity within the Canadian economy. And I want to take a moment. I'm just going to veer off script here for just a second. That's always dangerous when I do that, but I'm going to risk it today, okay? In the 4 years that Andre, first of all, some of us do actually appreciate tax. I was a public practice accountant for 30 years before I got here, so, but not that we appreciate it, but we appreciate the sharing of knowledge about it. So, when I switched or pursued this political role, there's a little story I always tell, and it's called Opportunity for All. I share it as a vision, and what I talk about is 3 simple points. One, when we fill opportunity in our communities, and those could be Indigenous or non-Indigenous, right? When we fulfill opportunities, we create an economic and financial stability for people. Having a good paycheck, having a good business, having a good job is really, really significant to us being able to take care of our families, right? The second component, there's an innate sense in all of us that want to be a contributor, that want to do something purposeful. And whether that's a good job, whether that's being an entrepreneur and being able to own my own business, there's a sense of pride, there's a sense of self-worth that comes when we do that, right? And the third thing that I always talk about is when we fulfill the first 2, we take care of a number of the social issues that we find in a northern riding like mine. Because what we do, and I specifically use a suicide crisis as an example. When I was elected, the first contact I had with the government was an email to Minister Miller at the time saying, hey, I just had a chief that declared a state of emergency on a suicide crisis. And that was my first experience with being a member of Parliament, right? But when I talk about the 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds in northern Saskatchewan that are contemplating suicide because they have no hope, when you talk about the first two things, the economic prosperity, the sense of purpose and fulfillment, guess what? When that 12, 13, 14-year-old young person looks at their mom or their dad or their uncle or their aunt or their big brother, their big sister, their cousin, somebody they're connected with and they respect, and they see that sense of worth and they see that independence, you know what you've given to those people? You've given them hope. You've given them hope that they don't have to contemplate suicide as an option. And so the effect of Indigenous business prosperity is huge in a riding like mine. And I encourage it over and over again. That was a long way of saying what I had on a smaller but more valuable scale. Their success represents hope in their families and their communities, right? That's a summary of what I just said. So eradicating poverty one business at a time, one entrepreneur at a time, one person at a time is the positive path forward. That's the step to a great future. So it's why I know the development of a place like this, the development of Adaawe and the IB Hub will be like dropping a pebble. It's going to be a pebble that'll have ripples across Canada for many, many years, for many decades. So with that said, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I'm so sorry that Shannon couldn't be here to be with us today. Please offer that comment to him. But I really do appreciate the opportunity to share this day with you. Thank you so much.